Hi everybody, and welcome to my living room on what's turned out to be a very pleasant and very nice Sunday afternoon. Today what we're going to talk about is how you fill out a fee waiver for California State Court. Not a lot of people know that when you go to court in California, either to sue somebody or, if you're unfortunate enough to be sued, that you actually have to pay a fee. Depending on the case, it can actually be quite substantial. $800, $500, $300, etc. So I have a separate video on how to determine the fee that you have to pay. I'm going to go ahead and link it right over here. So go ahead and take a look at that if you haven't seen it already. But the fee waiver form, if you qualify for a fee waiver, then it can actually be quite helpful because it makes, obviously the fees go away and, overall it makes the court process a lot more pleasant to the degree possible. So if you haven't seen my other video about how to actually go ahead and get court forms, I'm going to link it over here. And the forms that we're going to be working with today, though, are specifically the FW001 and the FW003. So if you want to find out how to fill out those forms, stay tuned.
Okay everybody, so the first thing that you want to do is basically go online and download two forms. This is the first one, it's the FW001 form up here, and the second form you want is the FW003 form, and you have to use both of these forms together. So if you don't know how to download forms, then go ahead and look at my other video on how to download forms. I'm going to link it in the description below, and I also linked it earlier in this video. So this form actually looks somewhat intimidating, but it's actually not that bad. It's only 2 pages, and the second page, depending on the situation, you may or may not need to fill it out. So this first page has a lot of bubbles here. So the thing is, bubble number 1, bubble number 2, 3, 4, and 5, and 6. But they ask for information that's actually not real complicated. So let's go ahead and go through this, and I will tell you, what to do for each section. So for bubble number 1, it's basically fill in your name, your address, and your phone number. I get this question sometimes is, do I need to live in California in order to get a fee waiver like this? If I live out of state, am I disqualified? And the answer is no. You can live out of state and still get a fee waiver like this. I've had clients who've lived in, Texas, Florida, Wisconsin, Arizona, and so on, who for whatever reason have just been sued in California or just need to use California's courts. And they can apply for this fee waiver and get it as long as they meet all the other criteria. I've even had clients who live in other countries, for example, China, Taiwan, whatever, who have applied for and gotten a fee waiver also. So number 2 here, if you have a job, put down your job title, the employer's name, the employer's address. The courts just kind of want to know whether or not you are employed. If you're not employed, put down unemployed. If you're in school, put that down. You don't have to worry about, the courts basically going to your employer and going, hey, does this guy really work here? So if you're worried that your employer will kind of find out that you're, involved in some legal thing, you don't need to worry about that. I've never seen the courts, go ahead and try to check to see whether or not this person really is employed at the place that they've indicated. For number 3, if you have a lawyer, you don't have to have one, but if you have a lawyer, go ahead and put down his or her name, firm, address, phone number, and bar number. You don't have to have a lawyer in order to get a waiver like this, but if you do, the courts are going to want to know who that lawyer is. As far as A and B here, the basic idea is that if you have enough money to pay a lawyer, then the courts are going to kind of want to know sometimes, I guess, depending on the situation, why you can pay your lawyer, but you can't pay, the court fees and stuff. So I've never had a problem with that, but it really depends on the facts of the situation and the county and whether or not you just, I guess, have bad luck and you draw a person who reviews your fee waiver that's a little more strict than others. But as long as you're honest and kind of upfront about what you put here, you shouldn't have a problem. If you lie about something, if you omit something, then yeah, you could be inviting a lot of unnecessary scrutiny onto yourself. So as far as bubble 4 goes, you can ask the court to waive different fees. So for example, you can ask for superior court fees, and if you want to find out what fees and costs are waived, you can go to form FW001-info right here. You can also ask for appellate fees to be waived, and that would be California Supreme Court, the California Court of Appeals, or the appellate division of the Superior Court. And if you want more information on that, go to these forms right here, the APP015, as well as the FW015-info. Those are the same form that just have 2 separate numbers. So that's bubble 1 through 4. The only other thing kind of up here is, this stuff right here, and you just basically have to fill in the court name and the street address. So, for example, you'll say, Superior Court, Santa Clara County, and then put in the address of the courthouse, or, Santa Barbara, or, San Mateo, or whatever county, or whatever courthouse in whatever county is involved in your case. So after you put that down, go ahead and put down the case number as well as the case name. So, for example, if your name is, Tom Jones and you're suing Fred Smith, it's going to be Jones versus Smith, something like that. As far as case number goes, a lot of times you can leave that blank because the courthouse people, like the clerks and stuff, will assign you a case number. A lot of times when you file for a request to waive fees, you actually don't know the case number because your case technically hasn't started yet. Let's see, what else? So number 5 here, number 5 is really kind of the bulk of the fee waiver request. So I'll go over all the options here. There are basically 3 of them. 3 options really in which you can apply for and get a fee waiver in California. So the first option here is is A, and that basically is that if you get any of these kinds of public assistance in California, these ones right here, then you will be presumed to be low income or poor, and you can get a fee waiver automatically. So to basically kind of go over these, it's Medi-Cal is one, food stamps is one, SSI is one, county relief / general assistance, in-home support services, CalWorks, just basically pick whichever one of these forms of assistance you actually receive. So if you happen to get one of these, then it's automatic. You'll get your fee waiver, no questions asked. If your income, your gross monthly income right now for your household is below these amounts, given how many people are in your household, then you will also be presumed to be poor and get your fee waiver automatically. So these 2 options, A and B, are automatic, and you'll get your fee waiver. Just there's no dispute or there's no doubt about it. You'll just get it. Boom, done. The third option here is a little more complicated. This, option C here is the discretionary one. So basically, you will get your fee waiver if you can prove that you're deserving of it. And if you don't get a full waiver, like, to pay 0 fees, then you could possibly get, some fees waived. You could get your fees to be paid over time instead of all at once. So those are the options here, and depending on your situation, which one of these options you want, waive all fees, waive some fees, make payments over time, you have to kind of explain in this really, really small box right here what it is that you actually want. If you fill in, if you kind of select option C here and you fill in all the blanks, that's when you actually have to fill out this second page, and we're going to go over that in the next section of this video. But if you check, like I said, option A or option B, you get your fee waiver automatically. If you check option C, then you have to fill in the second page, and all the other stuff kind of above here is all like biographical stuff. Yeah, so the last thing to kind of talk to you about on here is if you've waived fees in the last few months and stuff, you have to tell the court by just checking box number 6 right here. And then, when you're done with this kind of first page, go ahead and date it, print your name, and sign it. So that's the first page of this fee waiver form. It's actually not real hard. It's probably a little intimidating, but just kind of sit down and just sort of look through it. It's actually not so bad. Section number 5 here probably is going to be the most kind of work for most people. So that said, let's go on to the next section of the video where I go over how to fill in this second page right here. Okay, talk to you in a second. Okay, everybody, so in this section of the video, we're going to go over how to fill out this second page of the FW001 form. So again, this is the section, or the page, I guess, that you fill out if you select option C, 5C, and ask for a fee waiver under the court's discretion. In other words, you don't qualify to get a fee waiver automatically. So this page, looks a little intimidating. It asks for a lot of information, but it's actually not so bad. We'll just go through it right now. So the first thing you want to do is basically imagine a line that kind of goes vertically down the page right here, kind of how my mouse is pointing. If you imagine that line, everything on the left of the line goes over income, like what money is coming into your household. Everything on the right goes over what money is in your household already, as well as what money your household spends. So On the left here, you're going to look at your monthly income, you personally. So the thing is, if you're being sued, you have to put down, bubble 8 right here, all the sort of stuff about income, deductions, any other source of income that you get, like unemployment. All that stuff is going to be in bubble 8, or section 8 right here, and that's going to be for you personally, the one who's being actually sued in this case, or you're the plaintiff and you want to actually prosecute this case on your own. All this stuff here in bubble number 8 applies to you. In bubble number 9 here, though, this is all the stuff that applies to members of your household. So, for example, if you're married, if your mom and dad live with you, or you live with mom and dad, or if you have kids who live with you, any type of income that they contribute to the household through work and stuff, that's what you would list out in section 9. So the thing is, if you list out section 8, like fill in all the blanks here, and list out section 9, fill in all the blanks, and you add it up, that's going to be the basically total income that your household receives each month. And if your if your income varies per month, for example, for whatever reason, then go ahead and check box 7 and fill out section 8 and section 9 based on like a 12-month average for what you would get over the course of a year. So that's the left-hand side of this diagram, or of this page here. All the stuff in bubble 8, that's what you personally earn, and all the stuff in bubble 9, this is what members of your household earn, and you add it up, that's your total quote-unquote income. All the stuff on the right-hand side of the page goes over assets or expenses. So bubble number 10 here goes over like money that you have, or vehicles, real estate, other property, basically stuff that you could theoretically sell or basically use as cash. So for example, it asks you how much cash you have on your person, what financial accounts, like bank accounts, and the amount that you have in each, what vehicles, boats, cars, that type of thing, you actually have, and how much those are worth technically if you wanted to sell them. Same thing for houses. If you have any like buildings or houses, condos, pieces on land, stuff like that, and you needed to sell them, how much could they be worth? And for other personal property like jewelry, television sets, stocks, bonds, whatever, go ahead and list out their values here also. So basically, it's bubble number 10, if you want to think about it, is how much like money you could theoretically get, either from your bank account, from your wallet, or by selling stuff if you actually needed it. So bubble number 11, a lot of times, is where people sort of have some trouble, because they have, like, basically it's not really natural, I guess, to want to think of how you spend your money in terms of like these specific categories. But the basic idea, though, is you have to list out as best you can all the expenses that you have, and they've kind of put down a bunch of typical categories. For example, housing. Maybe you have a house payment, like a mortgage or rent or something like that, that you need to pay each month, listed out here under box or under line A. Under line B, put down any type of food, household supplies, like basically any type of stuff that you need to sustain yourself each month. For C, utilities, telephone, clothing expense, cleaning expenses, medical expenses, insurance, health insurance, life insurance, disability insurance, whatever. If you have children, you have expenses for that, school, childcare, spousal support from another marriage, if that applies to you. For J here, it's transportation, so gasoline, auto insurance, auto repair, car payment, all that type of stuff goes under J. And for basically K and M, those are for quote-unquote other expenses that you have. So for example, if you have a credit card debt that you're paying on, a personal loan, any type of stuff like that, so you would list it out under K. M is going to be for miscellaneous expenses that are really not captured in any of these categories up here. So go ahead and list those out. And for L, those are going to be like wage garnishments or earnings withholdings. For example, let's say that you got sued and you owed somebody, let's say a credit card company, you owed them $5,000 and you're paying them off at $800 a month, something like that. You would list out your $800 right here. Right here. If you have any other sort of emergency type stuff that really kind of explains why your expenses are the way they are, then go ahead and feel free to list that in another form. It's called the form MC25. Go ahead and download that like you downloaded this form, and explain your situation and attach it. So that is how to fill in this second page right here, and that's the second page of the FW001. So, tell you what, let's go ahead and go on to the FW003. Again, you have to submit the FW001 and the 003 together. So, tell you what, let's go on to the 003. Okay, everybody, so on this section of the video, we're going to go over how to fill in the FW003 form. And the 3 form is Order on Court Fee Waiver. So if you will go back and look at the FW001, that's the request to waive court fees. So the thing is, the request is what you're asking the court to do, and the order form is basically what the court has decided, I guess, on your request. So you need to fill in, or sorry, you need to submit, well, fill in and submit, I guess, the FW003 and the FW001 together. They're going to be served and filed as a pair. So for the FW003 form, the good news is that this is actually much easier of a form than the 001 form, but it also is 2 pages, and you're presented with some choices down here that you have to decide what's best to do in your case. So for this first bubble right here, it's going to be the name of the person, so you put down your name, your address, city, state, zip code. For bubble 2, it's going to be your lawyer's name. If you have a lawyer, put down their name, address, phone number, email address, state bar number, and so forth. For bubble number 3, this is just going to be the date in which you filed the 001 form. So when you file it, the court's going to stamp a date right here, and you just need to put that date in this box right there. And if you actually made a previous request to waive fees, then you have to indicate that here also. So the thing is, maybe this is the second time you've had to file a request to waive fees, third time, whatever, you got to put in the date in which you previously made those requests here. So on the right here, you got to fill in, obviously like on the FW001 form, you got to fill in the county that you're in. So for example, San Mateo, San Bernardino, whatever, and you also have to put down the address of the courthouse that you're at in that particular county. So, like with the previous form, you have to fill in the case number if you know it. A lot of times you won't, so just go ahead and leave that blank. And the case name. So, for example, from before, Jones versus Smith. So that's actually all that you really fill in on this form. This form's actually quite different than the FW001 form that way. So before we imagine like the vertical line going down the middle of the page, in this case, let's imagine a horizontal line going across the page. And everything above that line you fill out, but everything below that line you don't. Because below the line is what the court actually uses to, decide, I guess, what your what happens to your fee request. So in this case, for example, if you're applying to have your court fees waived, they'll check this box. But if you're actually requesting to have additional court fees waived for some reason, they might check that one. So best thing to do is go ahead and leave all this stuff down here blank. But the outcome of your request to waive fees, there are a couple, different possibilities. So the first possibility is that the court grants your request to waive fees, and maybe it's like that, maybe it's like this, or maybe you have a fee waiver for appeal, and the court has granted that for some reason. And for some of these, for example, for this general fee waiver, then they will waive all these fees that are kind of described in the bullets right here. If you're asking to have additional fees waived, maybe they'll waive the jury fees, but not the court-appointed expert fees and stuff. Or maybe they'll waive everything. It really depends on the situation. What else? So the second option, the first option is that your fee waiver is granted. The second option here is that your fee waiver is denied for some reason, like that. And there are a couple possible explanations for that. Number one is that your court finds that your fee waiver request is incomplete for some reason. So maybe you didn't fill it out properly, maybe you didn't include some important information. You got to go back and fill that in. You have 10 days in which to do that. The second possibility is that the court denies your fee waiver because you've shown that you're ineligible for one. So for example, let's say that you've kind of shown that your income is too high. in that case, the court will not give you a fee waiver at the first kind of stage right here. But the good news is that you can actually request a hearing to go before a judge and actually explain your situation. So, for example, let's say that your income, on paper at least, appears to be really high, which means you don't qualify for a fee waiver. But for some other reason, let's say that income is actually not accurate. Your actual income, meaningful income, is actually a lot less, and you should get a fee waiver anyway. So, in order to kind of request that in-person hearing, you have to fill out an FW006 form and then file that. I'm not going to go over the FW006 form because that form's fairly straightforward, and yeah, I don't really have a lot of people asking for it. If you do have a need for that form, go ahead and leave me a comment or something, and I will go ahead and fill that out. Film it one day when I get a chance. So, the third possibility here, it's either a grant, a denial. The third possibility is that the court really doesn't know. So, for example, maybe you've provided information that's a little confusing. They don't quite understand what's happening in your situation. So you might have to go to court to kind of explain to the judge why you need a fee waiver, why your finances are the way they are, and so on. So if you do have this third option checked, option C right here, the court will actually pick a day, a time, and a room, and a department, and all that stuff for you to actually show up and explain to the judge what your situation is. So that's it. At the bottom here, obviously, the clerk or the judge will actually sign off on it, and yeah. And down here is a bunch of stuff for the clerk's certificate of service. So that basically attests to the fact that you actually got the fee waiver order on time and on a certain day and all that stuff. So that's it, I think. Yeah, the FW003 form, that's actually pretty important. So if you happen to get a fee waiver, go ahead and keep this FW003 form with you when you go to court and stuff. And if you ever need to pay anything, in lieu of actually paying it, if you whip this out and show the clerk or show whoever it is that you're dealing with, yeah, that can basically get you out of actually having to pay anything. So I hope that was helpful. I realize I did that a little bit quickly, but hopefully you guys can go back and review this video to your heart's content. The bottom line is fill out the FW001 as well as the 003 form and file those two together, and hopefully you will get your fee waiver granted. So again, hope that helps. If you want to get in touch, feel free to do that. It's andychenlaw.com. And if you like the video, go ahead and subscribe and give it a thumbs up if you could. And I will talk to you later. Okay, thanks. Bye.